Let's talk Rennie Hotan. Today, we're joined by a distinguished guest, Rennie Bebiars, a former analyst at the United States National Geospatial Intelligence. We will explore topics ranging from discoveries made through satellite observations to evaluating China's nuclear capabilities, with a focus on the significance of the satellite interpretations in intelligence analysis. Welcome, Rennie. Such an honor to have you with us on the program.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
So, Rennie, can you share with us the information about China's, the nuclear weapons activities that you've been observing and discovered through satellites?
Yes, according to analysis of satellite imagery and other forms of geospatial data and information, China is both quantitatively and qualitatively expanding its nuclear weapons capability. Now, in terms of quantity, China is reportedly expanding its stockpile of nuclear warheads that are ready for use. In terms of quality, there are indications that China is preparing to conduct nuclear weapons testing, possibly in support of new nuclear warhead designs. Now, any such testing would likely support the modernization of its nuclear weapons.
So what do you think of the quality and the quantity? Do you think that it's in an equal balance?
Yes, that's hard to say just from the research that I do, but there are indications of both. So there are indications that there is an expansion in the number of weapons and probably new types of weapons being researched. Beyond that, there are some indications of testing. Testing would be for new types of nuclear warhead designs, most likely.
Okay, so are these designs that's actually needed by what's China's, their goal now?
So yes, what we're seeing are long-term developments here. So when stockpile is expanded, so when nuclear warheads are expanded and new nuclear warheads are created, you need to do some testing at some point to know that the new warheads you've built work correctly. Sometimes there can be tests of older warheads to make sure that they work, that they still work, that they work according to plan. And so in all cases, any such testing would be according to a plan to both expand numbers and expand new types of nuclear warheads.
I see. So we also know that the satellite images indicates that the construction of a new shaft in China. So what kind of advancement that we can see suggests in China's nuclear capabilities?
Sure. So China has constructed at least 2 new vertical shafts. These are very deep holes in the ground that are used for testing underground a nuclear weapon. These are usually used for larger nuclear weapons. So that's greater than about 10 kilotons. It could be as high as a megaton or several megatons. So these can be quite large weapons. Now, the reason that they build these vertical shafts underground is that when you put the warhead underground and then explode it, the ground protects from nuclear radiation and other things from being released into the atmosphere. So it helps to protect the environment to detonate these weapons so far underground. It's very difficult to do this, and so whenever this occurs, usually there are indications that it's happening. And indeed, we were able to see at least 2 of these vertical shafts being constructed over the last 2 years.
As you mentioned that this is a very difficult construction, so is it a typical way of doing the shaft, or is it something that's new that China is also testing out?
So that's a very good question. The answer is both. It is both a typical way to build one of these shafts, these vertical shafts, that China has constructed these 30 years ago when its nuclear program was more active. There was a period of about 30 years where that has stopped, and now there are indications that China is building those shafts again. And so this is similar to how it was conducted in the past when China had an active nuclear weapons program, and now we see the same kind of construction happening again, which seems to indicate that China's nuclear program is not just active, but quite active and potentially expanding in new ways.
So Rennie, you mentioned about that it stopped. It happened 30 years ago, and then there was a pause, and then they reactivated again. So what caused the pause, and what caused they to reactivate this construction?
Very good questions. And in the 1990s, multiple countries had active nuclear weapons programs. The United States, the Soviet Union, China. In about the mid-1990s, all countries agreed to stop testing nuclear weapons, and they agreed to have discussions, which became known as Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty discussions. Many countries met and decided that they would pause their nuclear weapons program after the end of the Cold War in order to reduce the number of nuclear weapons held by states, because these were seen as a great danger to the safety of the Earth. However, that seems to be changing now in the case of China's actions that we can see on satellite imagery.
Okay, so there's a change of China's actions, and also we see that, as you mentioned about the nuclear weapons testing, will there be any signs that we can observe currently now in China?
So yes, I mean, there are many signs that we can see now. First of all, there is a lot of construction at China's main nuclear weapons test site. It's called Lop Nor, the Lop Nor nuclear weapons test site. There are many areas of new construction, many roads being built, more electricity being expanded, more buildings being built, new areas at the headquarters, and new underground facilities, and these vertical shafts being constructed. So these vertical shafts that we've talked about are just one part of many things happening at the Lop Nor nuclear weapons test site. In addition, there's a very large nuclear weapons test support base about 100 kilometers away that directly supports nuclear weapons testing at Lop Nor. That has undergone extensive changes over the last 10 years, especially the last 5 years. New buildings, many new facilities throughout the area. All of this seems to indicate an overall expansion in China's testing capability and a heavy investment in its nuclear weapons program overall.
Okay, so you mentioning about the Lop Nor base actually leads to my next question about, you said there's many new things that's going on in the Lop Nor. What caused such a shift?
Well, that's a good question, and I'm not sure we know the answer to that. There are several possibilities. One possibility, and this was talked about in the recent New York Times article that came out on this topic, is that China's current leader, Xi Jinping, has emphasized nuclear weapons when he became leader of China in 2013 and 2014. And he started reinvesting in China's nuclear weapons program during that time. Now, these were decisions that his leadership have started to clearly promote. This was different than in the past. This was a big change from the past. Now, your question is why? I think several strategists have suggested that one reason is that China sees itself as starting to become more of a global power in the world, and it may want to begin directly competing with the United States, particularly in the Pacific region. And in order to more directly compete with the United States, it may feel it needs to have more of a nuclear weapons program, more of a nuclear weapons capability to help it in its competition with the United States.
As you mentioned that China is now aiming to compete with the United States based on your years of research on Chinese nuclear weapons. So how would you assess China's nuclear capabilities right now? Is it really possible to compete with the States?
Well, that is a good question. I can say that there are recent reports from, say, 2023, the United States Pentagon annual report on China's military power has reported that China's nuclear weapons have been expanding already, and that its nuclear weapons force is projected to expand to 1,000 or 1,500 in the next 10 to 15 to 20 years. And so that would put it on pace to begin matching the United States just in terms of the numbers of deployed weapons. Now, in terms of quality of the weapons and in terms of overall capabilities, I think there is a lot that we do not know about China's capabilities. And so I'm not sure we don't know that.
Got it. And also about the, China's rocket force, how do you evaluate the development?
That's another great question. And in fact, it's a great question because China's rocket force is its primary way of deploying nuclear warheads. So China's rocket force, it's also called the PLARF or PLARF, that has been expanding for the last 30 years, but especially in the last 10 years with Xi Jinping's coming in as leader. In addition to nuclear weapons expansion, the PLA rocket force has also been expanding. That has expanded to now controlling over 3,000 missiles, and this is both conventional and nuclear missiles, according to the latest 2023 US Pentagon report. And it's also developing or integrating new types of missiles into its force. So for example, a hypersonic missile, which is much faster and much more maneuverable than other types of missiles. And so again, both in quantity and quality, the PLA rocket force has been dramatically expanding as well.
Okay, so the rocket force, this is something that everyone should be tracing now, but also about the, the interpretation and the intelligence analysis. How significant is the satellite in interpreting these kind of informations?
So satellite imagery is very important for interpreting these new developments. And it's not just satellite imagery that looks like a regular picture. It's called electro-optical satellite imagery. Those are the images that you would see, for example, in the New York Times article on the topic of China's nuclear weapons test site. There's also radar imagery. And there's a company called Ingenispace that provides radar or SAR data and analysis that also helps us track China's military actions and military developments. This type of analysis is very important because while a regular satellite image can just show you one picture, one still image, radar analysis can show you activity over time. And so it can show you how often things are happening, movement, indications of movement of people and equipment over locations. So this can be a very important area of data and analysis to use as well. And Ingenispace has provided me with some of that information.
Is there any other tools and ways of China's intelligence analysis that everyone should be aware of currently?
So that's a good question. There's a lot of good open source information out there. So social media can be a good source of information. There's commercial satellite imagery, as I said, that can be purchased. There are many different companies that provide this, and the cost of that is going down more and more over time. And so not just academic institutions or universities, but also research institutions, research organizations, and even individuals like myself can purchase satellite imagery to do analysis now. There's also radar data that's more and more available, and many other kinds of human mobility data. This is data that you can use to help track the movement of people over space, over locations. All of this location-based data is very important for doing analysis of something like military issues, and in particular, nuclear weapons programs. And it's the data that I use to do my research.
Well, Rennie, thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us your expertise today.